everybody. It is July 18th, 2025. It's about 11:08 a.m. on the East Coast here in the United States. I am Lisa Salberg. I'm the founder and CEO of the HCMA, and this is Tales from the Heart. And we have been happy to bring you Tales from the Heart for over 170 episodes now. And while we may not be the most polished podcast out there, we are one of the most informative because we have real conversations with real stakeholders in HCM. And we thank our sponsors for their support. And of course, our big HCM team and our big cardio team, including all of our Center of Excellence partners, for joining us on this journey and helping spread education, awareness, and understanding of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and all thick heart muscle disorders. So, good morning. Today I am joined by Dr. Michael Ayers, who comes to us from the great state of Virginia. And what might I add, that Virginia is one of 3 states that currently has the language of Children's Cardiac Safety Act implemented into state law. Congratulations, Virginia. If you want to know how you can get your state involved, contact Julie Russo, our legislative lead here at the HCMA, and she will be happy to tell you how you can get involved. So did a little programming drop there. I'm getting better at this stuff. So, Mike, how are we doing today? How's July treating you? How's the summer?
Everything's going great. Virginia's got fantastic weather. We get all 4 seasons, and we are certainly in the midst of summer. So,
yeah, 100 degrees in Jersey yesterday.
Oh.
Yeah, it was rough. It was a rough day. So here we are in the middle of the summer, and today we're going to be talking about 2 topics. I know last week we didn't get a lot to discuss the vacation aspect of living with HCM, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today in our second session, or maybe our third. And as I mentioned in a previous podcast, I'm trying to break up the content a little bit. And you're going to get a little update from me up front of anything going on of note within the organization. Then my host or my co-host and I are going to talk a little bit about an article or a concept of interest in HCM that might be new, breaking, a little off the typical, how do I treat this? How do I live with it? But maybe more about what's coming or what have we learned more. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to talk about some other reasons why centers of excellence have a very specific value in the thick heart muscle disorder, sudden cardiac arrest realm. Understanding root cause of why your heart is acting abnormally is the absolute critical first step to get you to the right treatment. You can get the wrong treatment pretty easily. Getting the right treatment takes a bit more finesse. And we're going to talk about how we've spent 30 years as an organization, and institutions have spent decades building and recruiting and honing the concept of multidisciplinary care for complex disorders. So I set the bar a little bit high today because that's what I feel like the moment needs. So the topics from the street and the news that I want you to be watching and the thoughts that I want you to start processing are related to a federal court in Texas this week. I'm going to start this by saying this isn't political, it's regulatory. And I don't care who you vote for. I don't judge who you vote for or who you are as a person other than a human. And humans get sick, and you never know when it's going to happen. And the previous administration passed a law that made medical debt not reportable to your credit. We know credit is tied to housing opportunities, educational opportunities, and transportation opportunities. Bad credit, less opportunity. Better credit, more opportunity. If we're going to start hitting medical debt and putting it on credit reports, more bankruptcies, more hardship to families who are already struggling, it will make the poor poorer. It'll make the rich richer. Doesn't quite seem that we have figured out how to balance our healthcare system in the United States. This is a part of the healthcare system. I know it looks like it's over here because it's finance, but finance is the healthcare system. And this federal court in Texas wants to stop the previous administration's law from going into effect, claiming that it's not basically fair to credit reporting bureaus. You're all going to have medical debt. Copays and deductibles are going up. To have any kind of chronic disease, we know we have medical expenses every year. We need to speak to our elected officials about the true burden of chronic disease. And I don't care what party they are. My nails have been purple since the spring, since we went to Capitol Hill. This is an everybody issue. And I'm just learning about this week. This just happened on the 15th. We're going to be doing some work internally to see what state laws exist, what federal laws will impact those state laws, and where you still have medical credit protection if it exists at all soon. So sorry for the bad news moment, but it's just breaking and we're just figuring it out. And if you want to get involved or you know more about this, please do share some information. And if you have any expertise in this particular area, maybe you want to jump on a podcast with me and I'd be happy to discuss it with you. So there's that news. So let's go to geeky HCM researchy kind of news. Mike, let my intellect get tantalized here. What's got your intrigue these days?
We were talking briefly before. I'm kind of interested in how silent everything is on the cardiac myosin inhibitor front. So I think last time we were on, we had just seen a delay potentially in the release of Cytokinetics with aficamten coming to market and working out some REMS kinks. And I believe we had just seen Odyssey, which is the non-obstructive trial for mavacamten, announced that they were not going to hit their primary endpoint. And so I've been sort of watching that scene while at the same time Edgewise with cardiac myosin modulator is coming out and trying to figure out who's going to release some data first to help us figure out what direction things are headed. So that's caught my attention, sort of the silence, and I'm very interested, hopefully at AHA, to see some of the data behind the Odyssey folks. My suspicion, broadly speaking, is that non-obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is a very heterogeneous disease, meaning everyone looks really different. The patterns of hypertrophy and thickness are different. The way they present are different. Whereas obstruction, by and large, falls into two generally describable flavors. So when you do a clinical trial on a really heterogeneous group, there might be pockets within that group that are seeing benefit from the medicine. But if other pockets in the group are seeing no benefit, what happens is the overall signal of the trial gets watered down, and something that might be effective for a small group or even a large group might seem in a trial to be overall not effective. So back, why am I talking about the heterogeneity of non-obstruction? I'm talking about it because I'm looking forward to BMS releasing some of their data about who is benefiting potentially in this trial, how could we better design future trials, or do cardiac myosin inhibitors potentially not work in non-obstructive HCM? My suspicion is they do work based on some of the Maverick data that showed the drop in the NT-proBNP, a bad marker for heart disease in the blood, but we got to see the data. So I'm listening to the silence.
So I am speaking to the silence, and I feel comfortable in sharing this. So little history lesson for those of you just catching up. HCMA worked with the company that originated Ayers, which was MyoKardia, from pretty much their starting point through the first clinical trials. We helped recruit for both Explorer and Maverick. A lot of these people are long-term clients of the HCMA because that's who was finding out about trials early on. This is like mid-2015, 16 area where we're trying to find people and get them on the trial. And 60 people joined that trial, and 33 remained on that drug until May of this year. It's over half of the population stayed. It's 8 years of therapy for some of these people. And there's the improvements they have seen are pretty amazing. The two of them, I saw the trajectory to transplant come in. That was what looked like was going to happen. I can't say it was going to happen, but they look like those types of patients, and they're not anymore. It's only 2 or 3 people. It's not a mass, but it's what I can see from my vantage point and the people that I know were in the trial. I have seen EKGs normalize. I've seen left ventricular hypertrophy completely diminish and almost normal wall measurements present. In some, not all. It doesn't work in all. We know that. But why in these? What is working in these? And unfortunately, these individuals at this moment don't have access to continued drugs. We are working diligently with Bristol Myers Squibb in hopes to establish a compassionate use portal for those individuals who are longstanding Maverick patients. And I really hope that we get this through the finish line and we get them access to the drug that they've been on for 7 and 8 years. I think it's really important that we learn about them more. Why did they respond? What is unique about these individuals and who else is like them? And for those who did not find utilization, it's just as important to figure out who they are, what their genes are, what their phenotypes are, what their body habitus is, what their gender is, what their age is, what their anatomic anatomy is. And if we can figure out who is and who isn't going to be impacted, we win. We're never going to get 100% answer for everybody in HCM because our hearts look so different. But that brings me to the next point. And I, too, am really looking forward to the Odyssey data being opened because I really have a wonder if the patients that were selected from sites that aren't this multidisciplinary high-volume model outside of the United States, were they really hypertrophic cardiomyopathy? Were they hypertensive hearts? Were they amyloidosis? Were they Fabry's? Were they something else? Is that why they didn't respond? And if so, okay, we learned something. And we may have learned how important it is to get to a proper diagnosis. What do you think?
I think that's right on the money, Lisa. I think the big worry is that patients with phenocopies or genetic mimics of HCM that aren't HCM, or patients with hypertensive cardiomyopathy, long-standing high blood pressure caused thick walls, snuck into the trials. What makes most of us in the HCM community kind of nerd out about cardiac myosin inhibitors is that we truly believe cardiac myosin inhibitors are targeting the pathobiology, the actual cause of the thickening of the heart muscle. But if you get other people in the trial that don't have that same cause, the medicine certainly, plausibly, wouldn't have the same effect. So I think you're right. We need to unpack some of the data.
Can't wait to do it. So I'm going to pivot to my geeky item of the month.
I'm really excited for this one.
Okay. So story time with Lisa. Back in 1992, I received my first implantable device. I was part of a research program for using dual chamber pacing in hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. I was patient 106 in the trial, or 105, I forget, 100 and something, 105, 106. So I had that pacemaker from 1992 to 1997 when it was explanted and I got an implantable defibrillator. Then Tech AV, about the size of a cell phone, subpectoral, not a lot of fun. But that first pacemaker had a lot of battery life left in it. And I wanted to do something with it. And I had met a veterinary cardiologist by the name of Phil Fox in New York City. And I called him up and I'm like, if I can get my pacemaker back, can you give it to an animal with HCM and see if it works in them, if it helps them? And he's like, sure. So I donated my first pacemaker to a cat. And he treated the cat and saw if it would help. And I don't really remember the outcomes, to be very honest with you, but that's where my first pacemaker went. And over the years, I've been following the work of some of our researchers in the feline space because cats have HCM at about the same level as humans have HCM. It can do all the same things to a cat it can do to a human. It can cause congestive heart failure. It can cause arrhythmias. It can cause sudden death. And it can cause strokes. So cats are a lot like us. So there's this really cool cat colony. So for those of you who are medical research watchers, I am too. and ethical research is critical. And this is a colony of cats, so they live there. They are not sacrificed. They do not get killed on purpose. They are treated with things that we think will help them, not treating them just to see if they get sick or what happens to them. These are really refined treatments, very similar to what we do in humans. So this cat colony has some really great research over 20, 25 years, and a lot of it is crossed over to human, and some of it's kind of behind the scenes. It's in the preclinical space, so patients don't see it very often. But I am a geek and I follow it. So there's this really great data out right now, and I think it's Dr. Stern is his name. I'm going to have him come on up here with me soon and talk to you all about cats. So we're going to be developing some web content about cats with HCM and how they're so similar to humans. And if you have a cat with HCM, what can you learn from humans? And if you're a human, what can you learn from the cats? And we have some people with HCM who have cats with HCM. So they might get some special play on this one. But what they've just done in cats is they've used the drug that we use in transplant called sirolimus, the generic version actually, and they've used it in lower doses, and it has been shown to improve left ventricular function, and it can help relax hearts, which is kind of interesting for transplant patients. When they're taking sirolimus at these higher levels, they do get some of that benefit as well. But you don't have to go to that level of immunosuppression. You can go way below that. So give smaller doses and treat just the heart. So sometimes the tools already exist. We just have to learn how to use them in what form of HCM. So it looks like we found something for our kitty cats. Maybe there's something to learn for the humans here. So let's keep our minds open, look at the data, do some research, and see what we can figure out. So that's my cool sciencey geeky thing today. And I am really looking forward to a fun little partnership to build out some web content with a great volunteer. Her name is Westy. Shout out Westy. And I think we're going to do some really great things for the kitty cats. It'll be fun. So let's go back to Center of Excellence as a topic, because you brought up some really good points in the Odyssey trial example of who are these patients and why is it important to know what thick hearts are what thick hearts. So let's hit some top points. How long does it take the average patient to get diagnosed with HCM?
So most of this data is coming from Anjali Owens, who did some analyses of registry data. And what it looks like is that overall, we diagnose around 1 in 10 patients who have HCM with HCM. How do we know that that's the number? Well, there have been several large-scale imaging studies of subsets of populations. So you go in and you just image everyone whether they have symptoms or not. There's been about 6 or 7 of these that we could reference around different parts of the world, and all of them seem to show that around 1 in 250 to 1 in 500 people have HCM. So you can use 1 in 300 as kind of an easier number, somewhere in between. There's about 350 million Americans, so we should have over 1 million people diagnosed with HCM in this country. However, if you look at ICD-10 registries, what it looks like is we diagnose much closer to 150,000, 200,000, meaning somewhere in 1 in 5 to 1 in 10 patients who have HCM, if you extrapolate from these large imaging studies, have been correctly identified. So first point, HCM is underdiagnosed. Second point, when you look at that population who have been diagnosed, most of them had symptoms, whether they knew they were HCM symptoms or not, for 5 to 7 years prior to diagnosis. And most of them saw 2 to 3 cardiologists, not just physicians, but cardiologists prior to getting their diagnosis. So now we have, this is dramatically underdiagnosed, and there are delays in diagnoses. The third thing, which might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but stay with me here, is that when we look at referrals for patients labeled as HCM to tertiary referral centers, right? So a cardiologist said, this is HCM, I'm going to send them to go see Michael at UVA. What we find is about 1 in 7 to 1 in 8 patients labeled as HCM didn't have HCM, they had something else. The most common thing that they have is mild hypertensive cardiomyopathy, meaning they've got some heart thickening that doesn't meet criteria, but things were mismeasured on imaging because it's a pretty tricky measurement, believe it or not. And keep in mind, we're talking about millimeters, right? From 11 millimeters to 15 millimeters is making the difference in the diagnosis.
I got to keep a ruler on my desk to show people how small that really is.
So tiny, right?
So
tiny. And we blow it up on the screen for the patient. They're like, how did they mismeasure that? And I'm like, well, keep in mind, it's so small, right? So this is underdiagnosed. There are delays in diagnoses. And point number 3, it's often misdiagnosed. And people told they have HCM have either hypertensive cardiomyopathy, or the other most common thing that we diagnose is amyloid, which is treated entirely differently, right? An entirely different paradigm. So HCM really tricky diagnostically. It's underdiagnosed. There's delays in diagnoses, and it's often misdiagnosed. And that's really why you want someone who sees a higher volume of these visiting your patients. Now, it doesn't mean they need to be the primary care deliverer. Oftentimes, I'll do a one-time consult, and then I will offer patients to go back to their cardiologist, and we'll share the patient. But I do think there is a large role for higher volume centers in the management and diagnosis of this disease.
So simply on the fact of removing a diagnosis and getting somebody on the proper path is one of the strongest values of your first visit to an HCM center. Do I belong here? Are you my home? Are you my people? And if you found your tribe, we got you. If you're close to your tribe, we're going to redirect you. In some cases, some of our HCM docs will manage the amyloid or Fabry's or other thick heart muscle disorder, or maybe they have a colleague that does it even better than they do, and they want to bring in extra help because while we look alike, our underlying mechanism is different. And making sure you're treating underlying mechanism is what is going to give you the best outcomes. And if you can figure out your underlying issues and your best pathways, then you give your family crumbs to follow to get to their right diagnosis and their right therapy. And within families, it can be different. You can have mild phenotype, mild symptoms to heart transplant. And you can be anywhere in that spectrum. And I am a living example of family members in that entire spectrum. They don't all go to transplant. They go all over the place. So you can't predict where a family member is going to go. But if you know you have amyloidosis and not hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, we're going to be screening differently. Your family should be aware of different potential consequences. If it's Fabry's disease, you should be treated differently, and your family outcomes could be very different. If it is a syndrome-related hypertrophic cardiomyopathy presentation, Danon syndrome, Rasopathies, Noonan syndrome, your pathway is different. Why is your heart thick? And the centers of excellence are the place to find out. So what else can we, you know what, Mike, let's take a pivot for a second. So you've been working inside of a center for a great number of years now. Why does a center structure work well? Obviously, every structure could be improved. We know that. But why does it work better to have a structured team versus you're just the guy who knows HCM, who knows how to put the puzzle together? Why is the team so critical?
Well, I'll turn it around a little bit and I'll describe what we do at our center. And then maybe the people listening can kind of reflect what's different between that and a general cardiology visit. And now some of the smartest people with whom I've trained are phenomenal private practice general cardiologists. They are great doctors. They are brilliant humans. But when you go see them, it's going to be, you see their MA, your vitals are taken, they come in the room, they spend 15, 20 minutes with you. If you're lucky, that's a lot of time in a private practice office, and they're moving on to the next visit. right? And that's the structure of general cardiology private practice groups by and large. And that works for 95% of problems. HCM, I'm not sure, is one of those problems that can be regularly taken care of in that model because of the amount of things that go into taking care of an HCM patient. So if you get referred to UVA, the first thing that happens is we have a unique HCM scheduler and a unique HCM chart prep team that goes through and gets all the information, right? So I'm going back and I'm looking at every echo we can find on Lisa, and we're putting it in the chart when we get that referral. So that's unique. And they know I want to see the hemodynamic tracings, the pressure tracings inside the heart from your cath. I don't want to read a report. I need to look at it. That's the first thing. Secondly, when you come to visit us, we have an HCM-specific sonographer, in fact, a team of sonographers, and we have HCM-specific MRI readers that are either obtaining your images or over-reading your outside images. So you're getting people that are not reading a huge stack of echoes trying to get through the day, but rather are looking at HCM-specific echoes for HCM-specific problems. Once you've done that, visit still hasn't started, by the way, the first thing you do is you sit down with my care coordinator, who honestly knows more about HCM than I did as a second-year fellow. And she's going to sit down with you. She's going to go through and make sure we've obtained everything. If we're missing something, she's darting out of the room and she's messaging our IT people to get more images, right? So she knows HCM and she's sitting with you. After she finishes with you, our specialty pharmacist comes in. Our specialty pharmacist, who knows that the vasodilator might be making your that you're using for your blood pressure might be making your obstruction worse, who knows that I might be thinking about a cardiac myosin inhibitor and what drug-drug interactions do I need. She's sitting down and reviewing your meds, and she's going to come back to me and say, Michael, they're on 3 vasodilators before we start reaching for CMI, and make sure you address that. Visit still hasn't started with me, by the way. Then my genetic counseling team's coming in. We have 2 genetic counselors that work with us now. I always tell Matt Thomas, who's our genetic counselor, and Caitlin Amos, who's a new genetic counselor. I always tell them when I read my family history I've taken, it looks like I did it finger painting. And when I read his, it's like he did a watercolor. The amount of detail he's able to get out of patients, that's what he's an expert at, and he's great at it. You meet with the genetic counseling team. A new addition, which I'm really excited about, is then you get 15 to 20 minutes with our APP. As our volume has grown to almost 2,000 patients, access has become more challenging, and so we've added an advanced practice provider who's now becoming an expert in HCM, and she's meeting you, she's meeting the family, and she's coming back, and she's going to complete the visit with me as part of her educational process, and to make you know everything we're doing is part of a team. So if you have a phone follow-up with her that we needed urgently, you know how looped in she is to everything. Once you do that, then you're having your visit with me. And I'm coming in with all of the data that I've gained from the pharmacist, the nurse, the genetic counselor, and my APP, and we're having a 30-minute visit. Still not done, though, because after that, we now have hired an exercise physiologist who is specifically trained in HCM, who comes in and helps you write an exercise script. There's so much misinformation on the internet about what you can and can't do, what's safe. She comes in, she assesses what your goals are, she assesses what your concerns are, and we make a plan together. She does that after having talked to me and looked at the chart to know what I'm going to be concerned with from a safety perspective. Then before you exit the door, whether you're eligible for a trial right now or not, our research team comes in, which is made of 3 clinical research coordinators, and they come in and they say, here's what's going on in HCM land. Here's things that might apply to you in the future. Here's things that might apply to your family. If you get a call from me, it's because something new came up and we think you might be interested. Nice to meet you. Another addition to that, Lisa, that I don't think is quite ready for prime time, but we're starting our biobank soon at UVA.
Oh, great.
And so comes through. We'll get to give blood if they would like, so that down the road, if we want to test hypotheses, we can just say, Lisa, we got your blood on file. We would love to look at XYZ. Are you interested? And you get to say yes or no. So everybody gets to feel like they're furthering the field. So again, I tell my private practice friends they are in many ways a better cardiologist than me because of the breadth of things they deal with. But when you come see me for HCM, I'm spoiled by all of these riches and all these people that are adding expertise, adding their point of view, so that a team of people is taking care of you. Now, we also have a myectomy clinic where you'll see a surgeon and an alcohol septal ablation person at the same time. That gets filtered through me before you get that referral. And we also have 2 EP electrophysiology specific HCM experts. That gets filtered through me. One of them does have clinic the same day as me, and so we utilize him often when you want a same day visit. But again, it's a team of people that are taking care of you, not just me. And I think that's the big difference.
I'm sitting here listening, and I am, when I go to a site visit, just to give some context here, all of those elements that Mike just talked about, typically within a day, we are physically meeting with every single member of that team, sometimes individually, sometimes as a team, sometimes as a full team, sometimes as a partial team. And we're understanding, how are you going to operationalize this? How are you actually going to make it all happen? Because that all sounded just so nice and easy, right? You talk to this one who then talks to that one. I want you all to stop and think for a second about your own jobs, okay? Everything has a step. Everybody has a skill set. Everybody has to put that skill set to use at the highest level that they can to make this thing work. It breaks sometimes. Somebody gets sick for a while. Somebody's out and unexpected. There's humans behind this. And there's human capacity to do the work, and there's system capacity to do the work. When you align the two, you get a smooth running program. Change is always difficult, and that's okay. Centers ebb and flow. People change. Doctors come and doctors go. You've got a doctor coming in soon that people are going to start meeting. Some of you from Dallas might know him already. So people move around a little bit. So things do change a little. But we are here to tell you all, we check these programs out that they have this functioning. We know that they have the knowledge and ability at the director level to understand HCM at the deepest level because of their skills, experience, training, infrastructure that they have available to them, institutional support. It's not a gut feeling. It's proven. And some of these programs start small, and some of them grow fast, and some of them grow slower. Slow growth is not bad growth. It's what they can handle at that time with the capacity of the institution. And then we push for more growth and more staff and more ability to handle more people. And I'm really happy to say that there's 56 of these programs in the United States, with 4 more slated for this year and 30 more in pathway throughout the country. And then externally, we're looking at Mexico and Portugal and Brazil to build similar models. So, but they'll be different because they're going to be out of the U.S. and the access issues are different. But this is why centers matter. In our last 20 minutes, if you have anything else to comment on there, Michael, that was a great wrap up. Thank you so much for that.
No, we built this program with a lot of work. Some of it was in place with Chris Kramer when I got here and Bob Battle, who's now retired. Things that weren't in place, I basically pilfered from my mentors, Anjali Owens and Charlene Day at Penn, and kind of moved those similar models. But this sort of comprehensive care at tertiary referral centers is becoming a model for other disease states, and it's because of how successful it's been in HCM, and in large part, that's because of the work of the HCMA and Lisa in making this part of the guidelines. So thank you to Lisa, and we'd love to get you here if you want. We do try and put families all together, so everything I just described, if you want to come as a family, you get a family. We did, I think our record was 6, and it was basically just a whole morning of one family, and it was great.
That can be very nice and very supportive for some, and others, it's the most toxic situation that we could possibly create. So whatever works for you and your family dynamics, put it to work. Okay.
It is shared decision making at its finest. There are people that go, yes, please, and there are people that go, don't even tell them you saw me. So you make the decision, not us.
Exactly. As public or private within your family as you wish it to be. Okay, let's pivot to vacationing. And let's cover some of the hallmarks of Living with HCM through summer vacationing specifically, winter vacationing is a little different. I'll give a personal perspective first. Heat was just absolutely debilitating for me most of my life. I would have to, even as a teenager, participate in sedentary or water activities to keep myself cool and feeling like I could actually breathe through the summer. Air conditioning was my friend, always has been. And I had to learn how to regulate myself in heat so that I wasn't always saying no thank you. And I found out that electrolyte support drinks, at that time I only had Gatorade. They've got lower sugar content now, which I highly recommend, before I go out in the sun. And while I'm out in the sun simultaneously was very helpful for me. And I've used that on the rest of my family with HCM, and it's very beneficial for them as well. So we drink the sports drink in the morning before we go out, and then we keep going throughout the day with water in between. Hydration, 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 and shade and rest and reality checks. You're not going to run anywhere. You're going to go slow. Amusement parks, go slow. Drink water. If you're standing in a line and it's too still and you can't get air moving and you feel you're getting hypotensive, get out and go sit down. Like it's not worth it. You're not, the day's not going to end the way you want. You're going to be in the med tent and you don't want to be in the medical tent. So plan, get your rest, try not to be out in peak sun. Try to do your mornings and evenings. It's a little easier. And these are the things that I personally found helpful living through vacations and hot weather with HCM. Doctor, why did that help me?
Yeah. So patients, were you obstructed before, Lisa?
I've been obstructed, I've been non-obstructed, and I've been out of the club.
The really tricky ones to deal with in the summer are obstructed. But before I even delve into that, let me say kind of 30,000 foot view, a pattern that physicians see across all spectrums of illness is that summer is challenging because summer changes patterns, right? And so you're going to maybe take your meds at a different time. You're going to eat different things. You're going to behave differently. You might, drink alcohol differently. You just do a bunch of things differently. You exercise differently. All of that changes. And so really we see most disease states struggle with summer. That said, obstructive HCM is something that's really difficult to manage in the summer because we know that patients with obstruction, meaning there's a blockage of blood flow out of the heart, so the pressure's higher inside the heart than it is in your body, the rest of your body. We know that that's a very volatile process and that patients, you were telling me a story about your patients being scanned at a conference last year and they started off the day with mild obstruction. They had to fast through multiple scans and at the end of the day they had more moderate to severe obstruction. That's how obstruction behaves. It's really fickle. It's really volatile. And so we know that when you become even a little bit dehydrated, your obstruction can get moderately to severely worse. Obstructive patients are really difficult in the summer. As an aside, we recently ran our numbers. I have about 1,200-ish active patients. About 800 are obstructed. About 200 of those have had myectomies at this point. And so you're about 600 non-myectomized patients. I only have about 150 on myosin inhibitor. So despite being a huge proponent of myosin inhibitor, the majority of my obstructive patients, for various reasons, have elected not to be on a myosin inhibitor. Those patients not on a myosin inhibitor, and even those that are only moderately well controlled on their myosin inhibitor, this applies to you, right? This applies to you. If you become more dehydrated in the summer, your obstruction is going to get worse. So that was a longer answer than I think you wanted, but everyone in the summer has trouble because behaviors change. Obstruction is an area that was already ripe for volatility. You're now being put in that same environment of changes in behavior with a lot of heat.
A lot of heat. Heat, alcohol, vasodilation. I am reminded of, oh my goodness, I'm going to date myself now. A slide that Steve Almond used in an annual meeting of the HCMA in like 2007, I want to say. It might have been 2009. It might have been when we had Dr. Brunwald there. But he put up a slide about like a bottle of wine, a hot tub, and Viagra, and then there's an ambulance going by. Like your night is not going to end like you thought it was going to end. So like we need to think about vasodilation. It makes obstruction worse. It can bring on arrhythmias. Like just be kind to yourself. Remember to hydrate, and food choices in the summer. Okay. We all like summer eating. You know, you go Jersey, boardwalk, pizza, sausage rolls, ice cream. We don't eat like that during the rest of the year or in other places. Those heavier foods are going to be heavier in your gut. It's going to require more blood to process. The blood comes from somewhere. Where does it come from? It comes from your heart. You dehydrate your heart when you're putting more emphasis on your digestive system having to process heavy foods. So you don't need to be a biologist to figure it all out. Just the blood has got to go there to do the work. So think about smaller meals, lighter meals, and not a lot of fried things over the summer. So nice fruits, vegetables. There's lots of great fruit and vegetable options. Use those instead of the heavy fried stuff.
Your point about vasodilation really is great because I do have a subset of patients that are very prone to vasodilation in heat. And even if they push fluids, even if they push a little bit of salt with that, they get worsening obstruction. So to explain that to our listeners, when you're pushing blood out of the heart into the aorta, a slightly higher resistance or pressure in the aorta kind of keeps the outflow tract open. And when all of a sudden you drop the pressure over here, that stenting open of the outflow tract is less. Now there's a smaller area, and it's that smaller area that's causing the obstruction. So even my patients who behave wonderfully with fluids and salt in hotter weather, when the blood vessels in your skin dilate to keep you cool because it's so hot out, you're going to lose that stenting open of the LVOT, and you might become obstructed even if you push the fluids.
And we have those people with provocable obstruction who they're the confounders. You look at them at resting and there's no gradient whatsoever. You Valsalva them, it's only a little, but when we push you, and I've told many people this, please do not go to your doctor studying for the test. Please go like the adolescent child that lives within you who just wants to do all the bad things the day before. Do the bad things the day before you go to the doctor. Do not prep. Do not eat perfectly, hydrate perfectly, sleep perfectly, med time perfect. Be your normal self and be your bad normal self. And then show up at the doctor and say, this is my bad self. And that's how bad you get. Don't let them see how good you get because that's not going to help you on those bad days. So you eat the meal before the echo if you have symptoms from that and you want to find out if it is related to obstruction. Because if it's not related to obstruction, it could be related to microvascular issues. It could be related to something else, which could potentially have its own treatment. So if we show the bad self, we let them see the bad self, they can understand how the bad self is happening and then help you treat it.
Yeah. When I give talks to community providers or to patient populations, I say the first thing I'm doing is making sure we got the diagnosis right for all the things we talked about previously. But the second thing I'm really working to do is to make sure I've found the occult obstructed group, the people who are not obstructed all the time, but are only obstructed some of the time. Because everything we just said about pushing hydration and pushing salt, that's helpful if you're obstructed. What we've still not really talked about is the non-obstructed group. The non-obstructed group that goes out and pushes the salt and goes out for the seafood and, you know, is having more alcohol than usual. They're actually going to land themselves in trouble with some of that behavior, right? So what I'm telling my non-obstructed symptomatic patients is I say sometimes it's helpful to bring a scale with you on vacation, because if you notice all of a sudden you've gained 4, 8, 12 pounds in a couple of days, that's not fat, that's fluid. And if you see yourself accumulating fluid quickly, more than a pound or 2 a day, you're going to land yourself in some heart failure at the end of your vacation. And that is not how you want to be finishing your vacation. So we get the diagnosis right, but we make sure we find the occult obstructive group correctly, because we've got to manage that group the right way. If we tell them push the fluids, great. If we tell the non-obstructed person, you can land yourself in trouble.
If anybody has any questions about vacationing with HCM or centers of excellence or any of the other topics we talked about today, please feel free to drop your questions at any time during the live broadcast. If we catch them afterwards, we'll try to respond to them on social media. So you got a couple minutes for that. As a roundup, I just want to give a couple of other small announcements. Number one, we are going, I'm heading west next week, everybody. Stacy and Adam, actually, my husband's traveling with me this time as a board member, and he's going to be helping out on Saturday in Seattle at our patient meeting with your UVA, Virginia Mason. So that confuses me. Virginia Mason is not in Virginia. It's in Seattle. It took me a little while to get that one straight. And Washington University, David Owen's team. So we're doing a joint community meeting in Seattle at Bells Harbor, beautiful venue. Please come join us next Saturday, the 20, whatever that is. And we'll be out there for education, some camaraderie and some fun and some engagement. And then I'm going on vacation, and I'm taking 1 week off to relax, and I'm taking 1 week off to just write, because we're working on 2 books right now, because that's what we need to do. And we have somebody knocking on my door, and I know what that is. So we've got that coming up. We don't have any questions right now. Wow, quiet people today. There's some people out there. I'm sure you have.
If any of you are near Houston and you're looking for a cardiologist, Dr. Harper is an all-star. So if you get a chance to see Mariko, please do.
We actually have a louder and a quieter all-star out there. So David Owens up at UW, who's been in the game for 20 years and just keeps his nose to the grindstone and treats patients and doesn't come out very often and talk to us. So we have him, and then you have Mariko, who is building a program, is very charismatic and has like a bit of more social media and media profile. So they're a nice yin and yang, and they're both clinically excellent, but just very different people. So Liz says, we've taught something today. Yay, we got one learning moment. I think I learned something new, but not surprising. Did Dr. Ayers say provocable obstruction? Is this a concept that I've missed existing? Summer heat, but figured out it was just a big baby. You're not a big baby, Liz. No, you're vindicated. You're vindicated.
If you go back to some of the original studies out of Mayo, maybe 1 in 3 patients with HCM are only provocable with their obstruction. So that it is a very common thing that occurs, and you are totally vindicated. Little shout out to anyone listening. When the sonographer has you Valsalva, so they have you kind of close your throat and increase the pressure in your lungs. So you go. You actually have to hold that maneuver for 8 to 10 seconds before it reliably identifies the provocable obstruction group. So I'm giving you permission to blame me with your sonographer when you go get your next echo. If they have you hold it for 2 to 3 seconds, feel free to say, Dr. Ayers was saying 8 to 10 seconds really is the way we ought to be doing this. Because again, instrumental to the management of HCM patients, get the diagnosis right, figure out who has provocable obstruction. To do that, you need 8 to 10 seconds of a Valsalva, not 2 to 3.
So additionally, I want to give a shout out to a new concept that some centers are adopting. And this is called goal-directed Valsalva. Sounds really fancy. It's really basic. You take a tube, just that little tube that the blood pressure cuff plugs into, and you put it in your mouth. And then they take that and they put it on the blood pressure monitor, the sphygmomanometer, which I can never say right because it's a stupid name and they should have shortened it. But you blow into that to get up to 40 millimeters of pressure of mercury. And until you get to that 40, you keep it. It is a far more precise measurement than trying to bear down and not sure if you're doing it right. And I'm going to be very very, very transparent here. Some people are like, I don't want to bear down too much. I might fart. And then they're embarrassed and they don't want to do that. And the echo sonographers, they hear it all the time. Just letting you know, they're aware. But people do hold back because they're afraid of being embarrassed. So this really helps you not worry about the gastro stuff and lets you get through your Valsalva. So yay to the people who figured out the very basic yet complicated process. So what do you think about that?
By as many as 10 to 20% of patients that would have been missed otherwise. And so it is a really fantastic thing that has been studied. And I think Matt Martinez published on in 2025. So we're all pretty excited about that.
I think it's great. I love it. Okay. Jennifer has a really good question. When on vacation, if you end up in the ER and they're not familiar with HCM, I'm going to rephrase her question. How do we stay safe? ERs tend to overdo it with us because we scare them. They see our EKG. They want to admit us. They want to do caths. They want to do things because they don't know and they're afraid. You got to hold the line and you got to have a team to call. And you have to make sure that they know you are not doing anything without the approval of your HCM clinician or their team. You really want to work with your team to know when ER is your option, and an exacerbation of symptoms may be better served by a phone call to your team for evaluation and wait for their guidance. Obviously, if it's a new onset of symptom, it's very scary. It's very different. Obviously, you go for help right away and you worry about things later. But if you're short of breath or you're pulling on some fluid, the phone might be your best method. Doc, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess I'll break it down into 3 things that I would love for my patients to know. The first is a little bit sneaky, but I encourage my patients with very wonky EKGs to take a picture of it in your phone. It used to be folded up in your wallet. Now it's put it in your iPhone, right? Or whatever phone you want.
Both. I say put one in your wallet and one on your phone, because if your phone isn't with you or it's not charged or it's whatever, you can throw it at them and go, here it is.
So if your EKG is abnormal at baseline, you need to know that and you need a picture of it. Point 1B on that is I've started, Lisa, to order more and more high sensitivity troponins at baseline, because about 2/3 of HCM patients will have detectable troponin all the time. And if you go into an emergency room and you get plugged into their troponin, rule out heart attack. So troponin is a protein in the muscle that shouldn't be in the blood. If there's an underlying heart muscle problem or damage to heart muscle, it will be in the blood. About 2/3 of HCM patients always have it in their blood. And so knowing your level is helpful, because if you're always a small positive, being able to say, hey, here are my levels, I'm always a small positive, can save you from a cardiac catheterization, right? Because they're going to go, oh my gosh, heart attack. That's what emergency doctors are trained to think about. And so they're going to think heart attack, funny EKG positive troponin. Know your levels, know your EKG. That's point 1. Point 2 is know if you're obstructed. Are you a provocable or obstructed at rest patient, or are you non-obstructed? And point 2B is no, for my obstructed patients, usually I'm giving fluid. For my non-obstructed patients, usually I'm removing fluid. If you show up short of breath and you're obstructed, they're going to want to give you Lasix. They're going to want to give you a medicine to make you pee to pull off fluid. You need to be able to go, hey, I'm an obstructed patient. My doctor told me to be very careful with Lasix. Are you sure that's what you want to give me, doc? Right? Sometimes just an innocent question like that can really help you. All right. So you're going to know what your EKG and troponin look like. You're going to know if you're obstructed or non-obstructed, and you're going to understand basic fluid management for yourself to advocate for yourself. And then the third thing is I really want you to know what red flag features look like. And by that, I mean things that scare me. If you were walking around on the beach and you had a violent fall and you passed out cold, I probably want you admitted to a local hospital. I don't want you to wait till you get home. You can message me and we can discuss, but ultimately a scary passing out, a traumatic passing out, falling like a fish. Those are the kind of things that—
Not stopping yourself, just face first, face planting.
Yeah.
That means,
So
that's a bad one.
really important distinction, Lisa, because the sort of woozies, the sort of like I felt dizzy and kind of lowered myself. I'm not sure if I lost
Different
consciousness.
mechanism. Yeah.
Totally different, right? That can be an obstructed patient who's dehydrated. I'm talking about the patient who was walking, zero warning, boom, bloodied a face, bloodied an eye, right? I had a kid wake up in the grocery store in his blood the other day. Like those are scary to me, and those I want people to take seriously. So know what scary passing out looks like. Know if you're obstructed or non-obstructed in basic fluid management. And then if you can get your EKG and you can get your baseline troponin, your doctor might not want to order it for you in outpatient, but the assay's so sensitive now, I'm ordering it more and more so you can advocate for yourself and make sure the doctor knows if you've got a real change or not. Those are the three big buckets.
I will add another one. It is rare, and they are the signs and symptoms of stroke.
Oh.
Any change in sensitivity, you feel, I can't feel my face right, I can't feel my arm right, I can't think, words, no words, you get your ass to an emergency room. As a stroke survivor, I'm damn lucky I'm alive because I was young and I didn't recognize signs and symptoms of a stroke, even though I was only 21. So strokes come from a lot of things in HCM, and whether you're on vacation or not, you get your ass to an emergency room. Boom.
And stroke, time is brain kind of thing. And so the quicker you can get there, symptoms of a stroke, the more likely you are to have what we call deficit afterwards, not permanent loss of function of one of your brain's features.
Okay. So we have a couple of other questions I want to round up on, and then we're going to wrap. So Sherry had a question. How accurate is medically induced testing for obstruction? I'm assuming you're talking about goal-directed Valsalva or goal-directed Valsalva, or just Valsalva. Valsalva.
I'm wondering butamine as well.
Oh,
yeah. So two different things. A good Valsalva of 8 to 10 seconds, pretty reliable, probably still misses some people that are caught only with exercise or only with postprandial after a big meal exercise. And so if I've got somebody that's really giving me it's only bad when it's hot out kind of story, it's only bad after a big meal, I'm going all the way to exercise. And that's pretty good at finding obstruction. It's still volatile. And there's still a group of people that, for example, only get obstructed when they're dehydrated and they're sick, for example, and their heart's squeezing harder. But for the most part, we're pretty good at that. What's less reliable is medications inducing the gradient, because it turns out dobutamine, which is a common agent that used to be in the guidelines and no longer is, can induce a gradient in normal hearts, not just HCM hearts, normal hearts.
Can I go down an HCM rabbit hole from the past here real quick?
I would love it.
Okay, so back in the day when alcohol septal ablation was all the rage and people said you don't need surgery anymore, we can do it all with alcohol septal ablation, they were using dobutamine on these patients to find the patients who would be selected for these trials. Remember we talked about trial selection and getting the right people? They did alcohol ablations on a whole bunch of people that didn't even have HCM because they produced gradients with dobutamine that were never really there, and then you did a procedure, and then it wasn't really there, so it didn't do anything. So there was a lot of inappropriately selected patients based on that. But we learned, and here we are today. So there's really important reasons why things are thought to work, and then we go, oops, overdiagnosed, bad, pull back. Rabbit hole completed. Continue.
Amyl nitrate is something that Cleveland uses and a couple of centers use. That is validated and is more reliable, but there's some medication availability issues and some lab expertise issues, so I don't get that question a lot. I see provocation during angiogram coming up. If done correctly, a very good way to figure out if there's obstruction.
But if done incorrectly, how misleading can it be?
Very misleading in both directions. And so I had a referral from a very good hospital the other day where they said there was no obstruction, but they only used one catheter, and you have to use two catheters when you're doing this procedure. And so and arguably the one catheter wasn't even that diagnostic. So when done correctly, yes. When done in a quicker or more haphazard way, or perhaps not with HCM in mind, no. And again, I'm not saying anything bad about that referral, that provider. For most situations, one catheter is all you need to do a hemodynamic study. So if they weren't thinking about HCM, there was no reason to do anything else. When done correctly, pretty reliable though.
Fantastic. Okay, I think we've kind of toppled all their questions, and you're getting some thank you. Can you please repeat the name of the prescription that induces?
Amyl nitrate, and you can Google it. Cleveland's the center that uses it the most now.
So amyl nitrate, they're not hardly using it at all because it's hard to get right now. So here's the interesting thing about amyl nitrate. It's actually a street drug. They used to be called poppers on the street. Poppers. And so they create this euphoric feeling when you're getting vasodilated, and it changes hemodynamics, and it only lasts for a couple of minutes in the hospital. And that's how they get the provocation. But because it's been so inappropriately used and it doesn't have much clinical utility, the amount that is being manufactured has been lowered. I think we have other options now with the goal-directed Valsalva that might prove more beneficial than amyl over time. So we took away a medicine and we put in a maneuver instead that I think will be much more reproducible and available and more cost effective. It's $1 for the tubing, and I think amyl would cost more.
As a Charlene Day disciple, I do a lot of exercise because in addition to finding out gradient or not, it's really where the rubber hits the road, and I get to see what you're capable of doing. Because Lisa, we've talked about this before. When you live a long time with HCM, you lose sight of what normal is from an exercise capacity. And so I put people on the treadmill because I want to know, you say you don't have symptoms, how are you doing relative to people your age and gender?
Fantastic. Mike, I'm going to ask you to hold on for a minute while we end because I do want to bring up another concept with you, but it's not ready for prime time yet. So to everybody else, I hope to see you in Seattle if you're in the area. Come this fall, we will be in a couple of other places. We will be in Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and of course our annual meeting right here in Morristown, New Jersey, which will include our gala that evening. So patient meeting during the day, party at night, and a 5K the next day starting at 10 a.m. That'll have a 1 mile fun walk for families and a timed 5K. You can join us virtually. You can come out and sponsor a team. We're really excited about it. We were all over Morristown yesterday talking to local merchants to participate with us. I might have spent a little bit more money than I expected yesterday because, the sneaker guy had a really good deal, and the jewelry place, birthdays. And so I tried to raise awareness, but I ended up spending money, which is a good thing because they're good. The retail community of Morristown has a very special place in my heart. My father had a business on the green in Morristown, which is kind of like the place to be, from the late 1960s to almost 1990. And I grew up in that store, and I grew up in Morristown. So Morristown is a very close tie to the family. If you want to revisit the old stomping grounds, it is now the Frog, which is a really fun little restaurant. So if you come to the meeting, I'll take you over to the Frog and show you where I grew up. So I hope you can all join us in October at the meeting here in New Jersey. A lot of content, adults, peds, new clinical trials, lots of industry people to meet, lots of clinicians to talk to and have little conversations like we just had here with Dr. Ayers. And we hope that you come and join us. I'm going to go off to a navigation call now on a very special client. So you'll learn more about that one later too. Thanks to all, and for all of my friends who are out there in the hospital waiting for that call or home waiting for that call for a new heart. We had a dry run yesterday with one of our members, which was really exciting because we talked in the morning for navigation call. 2 hours later, she got an offer of a heart, but unfortunately it wasn't the right heart for her. It wasn't good enough to be transplanted. So Melinda, we got your back. It's coming soon. Hang in there, girl. Okay, so there we go for the day. Thank you all for joining us, and thanks, Michael.
The Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association would like to thank our sponsors, Cytokinetics, Bristol Myers Squibb, and Edgewise Therapeutics.